We move here. I know, it's third grade again. It's not, yeah, usually I teach, this is my biennial up here every 6 months. So this is the first Friday in February. Last time I was up here was the first Friday in August. So twice since there. But yeah, this is, the last time I taught, first time since school began. And it's the first time I get to teach without a mask on. So it's almost worth all the preparation just to be in this room without having to wear a mask. Okay. Well, I'm setting up here. Let's go over just a brief recap of last week. I hope you guys were encouraged when you saw that the protagonists, the main characters, were what age?
Our age.
Yeah, you're like our age. Like, yeah, that doesn't happen too often, right? Once in a while, like those stories, but also not just their age, but again, just how they could model. Hopefully you guys are able to do, since a lot of you kind of being plucked away to a different land like they were, from Judah, from their families, but every morning, most of you going to public school, you're leaving a good, nice, wonderful environment, you got this positive impact, and then you're taken away to a public school with all these like negatives are thrown at you. But again, we saw 4 teens taken from their families, brought to Babylon, surrounded by all that negative influence. They went to defile themselves, whether it was the diet that they had, they would not succumb to peer pressure. That's what you guys are dealing with. So hopefully you guys are left encouraged. You've been watching Max. I know you kept replaying it. Did they tell you, Max, that they love the beginning? Like their favorite part was the beginning. Yeah, no, some of you are laughing again and again. So this is again. So I actually I did enter. Oh! Okay, it's kind of pop. They love that. No peer pressure. Again, and the culture too. So the culture that they had. We saw integrity and conviction with them too. So let's open in prayer. Lord, thank you for examples that we have from your word. Thank you for giving us your word. Thank you for Daniel. And thank you for giving it to us in different languages too, as we see here tonight. It's exciting. Again, even though, again, you're the God of Israel. You're the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Again, we see tonight it's going to be for others too. We're going to see the upper story and the lower story as we're learning about like on Sundays too, reading the story, how you just continue to work throughout history, Lord, how you pave the way, whether it's using the Romans to pave the roads and with the language, whether it's Aramaic or with Greek, Lord, your word now is throughout the whole planet. And so we thank you for that. And thank you that you are the rock of our salvation as we see tonight, stone. May it not be a stumbling stone for anyone here. May they be open to your word listening. And again, just amazed by how you've worked since the dawn of time. Amen. All right, so it's a lot. He's like, Max is back. He's better. But this is a long chapter. And I'll have a timer here. Make sure I'm not going to run late here. Have it go too long, so I'm going to start that. So I get you out of here on time. Because, normally I'm teaching for like 6 hours. But I should keep you for 6 hours. All right, so let's have the slides up there. You keep looking back up there. So brief recap. Okay, so brief recap from last week. There, Daniel chapter 2. The first 3 verses here. First 3 verses, the American Standard. Now, in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. Then the king gave orders to call in the magicians, the conjurers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king, and the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to understand the dream. Now we have to stop there. I'm going to go back to chapter 1, because you have to know the context. Because if you were here last week and you heard Max, we ended in chapter 1. It says in verse 18, now, there we go. Right here. So Daniel chapter 1, so verse 5, I'm going to start that. And the king appointed for them a daily ration of the king's choice food and from wine which he drank, and appointed that they should be educated 3 years, at the end of which they were to enter the king's personal service. Now in verse 18, it says, then at the end of the days which the king had specified. So at the end of last week, the 3 years were done. He graduated. And now we're going back. So we have to kind of go back a little bit. So if you see here, verse 1, it's the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. So we're going back a couple years. So Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they've just like started. They're like into year 1 of their training program. Okay, that's a really important context for us to kind of grasp there just from first few verses there. So, again, they had that 3-year training program being completed and stating that Daniel would serve various kings until Cyrus. Okay, the last verse of it too. So he says Daniel continued until the first year of Cyrus. So he's saying, like, yeah, I got there at like mid-teens, and close to 73 years later is when I ended, like helping all these different kings from different kingdoms. So he's kind of going over at the very end there of chapter 1 that he's there for 73 years. Now we're again kind of going back to the second year of Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, and so he didn't call. So the king has this really worrisome dream, calls in all of these different people to get help from them. So there's soothsaying priests, conjurers, sorcerers, master astrologers, and later on, chapter 9, we're going to see again, if you kind of remember the Magi, 600 years later, when they were following the star, it's from Daniel that got them. So you kind of see these master astrologers like, hey, I remember reading about those later on. Like, yeah, they come back later, the Magi, because of this. A person named Ian McDoug, he wrote this book about Daniel, a biblical scholar about this. He says this: the conflict was initiated when King Nebuchadnezzar dreamed a dream. In the ancient world, such dreams were thought to be shadows that the future cast in front of itself, tipping its hand to show what lay ahead. The interpretation of the dream was therefore important, in order that the king might take whatever steps could be taken to counteract the events the dream anticipated, or at least to be ready for them. In preparation for such eventualities, many of the kings of the ancient Near East had specialist dream interpreters on their payroll, and Nebuchadnezzar was no exception. He employed a staff of diviners whose job it was to interpret the significance of such dreams and whatever other omens might occur. And so they're kind of looking ahead. Okay, he's like, this is really worrisome. It's not like us if we have like a big test or something coming up. You might have trouble sleeping. This was something major for him too. And we still have them. We have people with like dream books who might go and they actually like books of dreams, and these guys had them back then too. Now a lot of times when you're asleep, you're kind of working out things that's happened in the past to you, or you're kind of dealing with it. We still have dreams kind of about what we're worried about. But this was something that is really, really powerful because it really shook them up. And this is very common, I mentioned, with other leaders too. In history, we see that Alexander the Great visited the oracle of Delphi. King Croesus of Lydia, which was in western Turkey, she sent to the great oracle at Delphi to know whether he should go to war against the Persian Empire. So he took these astrologers, these conjurers, they took them very seriously. All right, you can go to the next one. Okay, 4 through 9. All right, verses 4 through 9. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic. O king, live forever. Tell the dream to your servants, and we will declare the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the command from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you will be torn limb from limb, and your houses will be made a rubbish heap. But if you declare the dream and its interpretation, you will receive from me gifts and a reward and great honor. Therefore, declare to me the dream and its interpretation. He answered a second time and said, let the king tell the dream to his servants, and we will declare the interpretation. The king answered and said, I know for certain that you are bargaining for time, inasmuch as you have seen that the command from me is firm, that if you do not make the dream known to me, there's only one decree for you. For you have agreed together to speak lying and corrupt words before me until the situation's changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, that I may know that you can declare to me its interpretation. Okay, this is a big change here. Now it says here in verse 4, it says the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic. The record in the text from chapter 2, verse 4 to chapter 7 and 28, Daniel wrote it down in Aramaic. So everything before this is written in Hebrew. And now we have another language, Aramaic. So Aramaic at that time, it was also known as the Syriac language, because it's in modern-day Syria. And how many have seen the movie The Passion of the Christ? Not too many of you. Oh, freshmen, if you like been begging your parents, I go watch a radar movie, I go watch RoboCop, no, Rambo, no. Okay, if you say The Passion of the Christ, your parents will go, all right, that's good, a good Christian son or daughter. And so, yeah, you've heard Aramaic. So if you've seen that movie, just a few of you, watch it. It's in Aramaic. Actually, all these actors, they had to learn Aramaic, just phonetically, to say it, because the whole thing's done. It's subtitled, don't worry. So those of you who are still learning right now. So you can just read it. It's a great movie, but it's in Aramaic. So it's still at that time later. So I can't make that connection. Like at the time of Jesus, they're speaking it, and now it's recorded. That's so exciting. Again, the upper story, lower story. God is now, because they've been removed from Israel. Again, Judah no more, Israel no more. And they wrote down there on Sunday, kind of when the kingdom was taken away. And so now it's like God's going out to the Gentiles. So this is so exciting to see how God's working. Aramaic was the court language, the diplomatic language in that day, the language of the Gentiles, the entire region, the known world at that time. And so this record from now up till, again, the end of chapter 7 would be understandable, not just to the Hebrew speakers. Okay, next slide. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, "There is not a man on earth who can declare the matter for the king, inasmuch as no great king or ruler has ever asked anything like this of any magician, conjurer, Chaldean. Moreover, the thing which the king demands is difficult, and there is no one else who could declare it to the king except God's, whose dwelling place is not with mortal flesh." Because of this, the king became indignant and very furious and gave orders to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they looked for Daniel and his friends to kill him. Then Daniel replied with discretion and discernment to Arioch, the captain of the king's bodyguard, who had gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's commander, "For what reason is the decree from the king so urgent?" Then Arioch informed Daniel about the matter. So Daniel went in and requested of the king that he would give him time in order that he might declare the interpretation to the king. Okay, now we're not too sure also if Nebuchadnezzar, if he remembers his dream or not. Okay, now sometimes sometimes you wake up like in a panic. I've done before, like, oh, that was the worst dream. And it's almost like it's kind of falling over a precipice, where it's just like, you're trying to remember it. We've done that. Just like a few seconds, like after you wake up, it's like it's right there. You know this is a dream, and you kind of lose it. So it's not too clear whether he's just testing them. Okay, so you might just be testing him. You might, actually not remember it. But again, you notice that they're really polytheist, okay, like all these other nations are, except for Israel and for Judah. He mentions there, all the different, he mentions the gods, and only the gods can do it. But this guy doesn't seem like a really good leader. Okay, a few years ago, maybe for like half the nation when Trump was president, and like, what is this guy? Some people were, hey, this guy's kind of woo-hoo, and now about over half the country too. Like, what is our president saying? Can't understand him. Well, at least they weren't like him, because you read about Nebuchadnezzar here. This is like the most powerful person in the world. He's the king of this huge empire, and he's kind of paranoid. I mean, you think he's more like kind of the Queen of Hearts? It seems like that, right? Off with their heads! So that's his reaction to all of this. Later on, New Testament, time of Jesus, it's reminding you of King Herod. Yeah, King Herod, same thing. Extremely paranoid. Wise men, again, from here, the same region, come. We're here to worship the King of Israel. We saw a star from the east. And he wants all these babies slaughtered. Because of it. So we see that. Now, Nebuchadnezzar might kind of be justified in this because he had just taken over. His dad had been ruling for about 20 years. His dad was Nebuchadnezzar. He died in 605 BC after ruling for 20 years. And he was powerful. He was well respected. And so this whole court he's worried about. And usually you get rid of them. You usually would do that. But again, he's worried if they're loyal to his dad still. Because he had a major uprising against the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Okay, if you remember over there, I wrote down on Sunday, if you were here, you can check out that the Assyrian Empire was the one that took the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes of the north. They had fallen over a century earlier, and that powerful empire was now destroyed by the Babylonian Empire. Because they ruled for Babylonia for more than a century. Eventually led to the complete destruction of the Assyrian Empire and the rise now of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. So Nebuchadnezzar is still pretty new on the throne, and so he's super, super paranoid. We also notice here in verse 13 that even Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would be killed, even though they weren't present. Again, they're just like a year into their training, and yet they are considered part of this wise men group, and they were going to be killed. Now, notice him. Again, he's like your age. Look at the maturity that he has, the discretion, the discernment. Now, he's not fatalistic. He's not like, oh, I serve an all-powerful God, and God put Nebuchadnezzar on the throne. This is the decree of Nebuchadnezzar. Here, Arioch, bind me up and lead me to my death. Doesn't do that. He's not like David, that's not acting like him. Okay, he just kind of grabs, slings, goes up there like, let me go kill this uncircumcised Babylonian. He's not acting like that either. He shows remarkable leadership skills for a teenager. Okay, no offense. No, you guys are great. He doesn't panic during a crisis. Okay? He really de-escalates the situation, doesn't he? Who is this guy coming? Arioch. He's the chief executioner. His job is to kill people and to kill lots of people. Okay? So he's not like a big teddy bear guy. He's one bad hombre. Okay? And so, I had to say that it's church. There's other bad words you can say here. But he's just really tough. And yet Daniel is able to, again, show this charisma, a very winsome nature. And so Arioch agrees to his request here. And then he goes in verse 16, requests the king give him some time, and he's showing respect to authority. All right, next slide, please. Verse 17, here, 17. That's right here. Okay, 17. Then Daniel went to his house and informed his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And that's their Hebrew names. I'm saying Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego because that's how they're known. But again, this is their Hebrew names. About the matter, in order that they might request compassion from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his friends might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in the night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, let the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him, and it is he who changes the times and epochs. He removes kings and establishes kings. He gives wisdom to wise men and knowledge to men of understanding. It is he who reveals the profound and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To thee, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise. For thou hast given me wisdom and power. Even now thou hast made known to me what we requested of thee. For thou hast made known to us the king's matter. Okay, so he goes back, sent a corporal prayer. It's like, oh, there's power. Okay, goes to his three friends, lets them know that we're in trouble. Okay, and so they ask for mercy and compassion. Now, notice that phrase too, in the 18, right there. Okay, God of heaven. Look at God of heaven. Okay, we don't hear that too much. We come to church for a long time. We'll hear like God of heaven. A few parts in Genesis, but for, again, most, these hundreds of pages, it's not the God of heaven. Now, you heard it last Sunday. If you're here, you heard Glenn, because Glenn, as we closed out the story, the Old Testament, and it's a narrative order for the story. It's not in chronological, or it's in chronological, not like we have it arranged. So the last two books we have with Ezra and Nehemiah. So in Ezra and Nehemiah, they refer to as the God of heaven also. So it's kind of an unusual phrase. You don't see it too much. But this time, again, it's post the destruction of all, the 10 northern kingdoms and the 2 southern kingdoms, Judah and Benjamin. And so God, or he already left. Remember, if you look at Ezekiel, Shekinah glory left the temple. It was still the God of Israel. It was still the God of Judah. But now that's gone. It's gone. They're hundreds of miles away. And so now they refer to him as the God of heaven. Because again, Israel is no more. And so we notice that. Now, verse 19, Daniel had a vision at night. That's a dream. He is dreaming. When you dream, when you are asleep, he is facing death. Okay, he's not just facing a midterm, okay, or something else. Death. You're just going to die. Okay, usually if you're going to die the next day, you don't sleep. Okay, if you've ever had sleepless nights, it's not because you have death the next day. He is able to fall asleep. Meanwhile, the most powerful person in the world, Nebuchadnezzar, he can't sleep. Daniel could. Philippians 4:7 again speaks about the peace that surpasses all understanding. Daniel had that. Verse 20. Now, if you notice here, the text kind of changes. So in most of it, again, in Daniel, it's prose style. If you go to your Psalms, your Proverbs, okay, you will look and you'll see it's very narrow. Okay, kind of like how you guys write your papers, right? So your teacher goes, you got 5 pages, of course, because you made the margins in, right? It could actually, should just be 4 pages. So there's prose style and there's poetic style. This is poetic style. And so Daniel doesn't record his prayer, though. Wouldn't you want to see that? You're like, whoa, you made God give you this vision? Like, tell us the words of that prayer. He doesn't record that. He's like, no. Okay, that's not important. There, what's important is this praise, to give thanks to him. Because again, it was the heart. It wasn't some special mantra or some special words that he used. It was just a really heartfelt prayer that Daniel and his 3 friends had. But he doesn't record that prayer, but he records this, like a psalmist would, is to glorify God, who's worthy of being praised. Look at the gratitude he shows, the appreciation, the thankful heart of a servant. And so that's what's recorded. And if we look at that, oh yeah, that's how we should be too. Because when we usually pray, it's when trouble comes, right? We get on our knees, God, please. And then, all right, worked out. Cool, thanks. And then it's like, no, okay, our prayer of petition was a lot longer, a lot more heartfelt, and all right, okay, yeah, you are on your throne. And that was it. Like, no, this is what he wants to make known. Again, the prayer that shows that he, again, got the vision. Next slide, please. Therefore, Daniel went into Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and spoke to him as follows: Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me into the king's presence, and I will declare the interpretation to the king. Then Arioch hurriedly brought Daniel into the king's presence and spoke to him as follows: I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can make the interpretation known to the king. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered before the king and said, As for the mystery about which the king has inquired, neither wise men, conjurers, magicians, nor diviners are able to declare to the king. However, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place in the latter days. This was your dream and the visions in your mind while on your bed. As for you, O king, while on your bed your thoughts turn to what would take place in the future, and he who reveals mysteries has made known to you what will take place. But as for me, this mystery has not been revealed to me for any wisdom residing in me more than in any other living man, but for the purpose of making the interpretation known to the king, and that you may understand the thoughts of your mind. So verse 24, do not destroy the wise men. He has mercy. It's not just, save me and my friends. We had it. Like, kill all these bad guys. No. Okay, he says, do not destroy all the wise men, showing mercy to everyone. Verse 25, Arioch, I have found a man. Oh, how many of you guys have like group projects or something like that, and someone else takes credit for it? Like, Arioch, you didn't find him. Come on, he came to you. But again, a lot of people, they want to take credit even though they don't deserve it. Verse 28, he's talking about the God. Okay, a God. There's one. Okay, the one and only true God in this polytheistic society. Again, because he comes from monotheistic Judah. He knows that there's only one true God. Verse 30, he deserves no credit. He's just saying, Daniel's like very humble. I'm nothing special. God grants them knowledge, the wisdom, and insight. And it's for God. And now we see that, unfortunately, not too much around here. You watch some weather report, meteorologist is like, oh boy, we had a really severe storm coming by, but Mother Nature spared us the brunt of it. And Mother Nature didn't do that. Or even sports, they talk about baseball gods, and the basketball gods were friendly on the Warriors, and you just, come on, it's ridiculous. We see that. Okay, next slide. You, O king, were looking, and behold, there was a single great statue. That statue, which was large and of extraordinary splendor, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was awesome. The head of that statue was made of fine gold, its breast and its arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its leg of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You continued looking until a stone was cut out without hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and crushed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed all at the same time and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them was found. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. Now we shall tell the interpretation before the king. You, O king, are the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. And wherever the sons of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, or the birds of the sky, he has given them into your hand and has caused you to rule over them all. You are the head of gold. Okay. Let's take a look at the next one. Next slide. Okay, now going to Jeremiah here, because in that previous one here, he mentioned servant. So if you look here at Jeremiah 27, especially right here, so make sure that. In the beginning of the reign of Zedekiah, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, this word came to Jeremiah from the Lord. I have made the earth, the men and the beasts which are on the face of the earth, by my great power and by my outstretched arm, and I will give it to the one who is pleasing in my sight. Now, I have given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, my servant. And I have given him also the wild animals of the field to serve him. All the nations shall serve him, and his son and his grandson, until the time of his own land comes. Then many nations and great kings will make him their servant. Okay, so again, this is to Zedekiah. Okay, so that was the last one, 20th and final one. I got it over there, too, if you want to look at the time frame. And so this is prophesied already. And so Daniel's saying the same thing here, that again, you're my servant. And later, 600 years later, same thing. We see this all-powerful Caesar Augustus, thinks, I am it. I am the most important person. Just a little puppet in the hands of God, because his decree caused Mary and Joseph to go down for the census, down to Bethlehem too. And so again, we see the upper story and lower story, even continuing again 600 years later. Okay, in verse 38 too, he mentions Babylon is the head of gold. Babylon's actually called the Golden City in Isaiah 14:4, that's King James Version. That thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. And so even then, again, see the gold. Next one, let's see, verse 39. Okay, so covering short of time here. So Media Persians, the silver one, so read it behind me. In Daniel, 3 chapters later, in Daniel 5:28, it says, your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and Persians. Okay, so this top part gold, Babylon. Next part, silver part, that is the Medes and the Persians. And then we have next bronze, that is the Greco, which is Greece, Macedonian Empire of Alexander the Great. Now, secular scholars put the writing of this book of Daniel after these prophecies come true, because they don't believe in miracles. They look at this and go, wait a minute, this is written now? But wait, these things happened hundreds of years later, these major kingdoms. That's not possible. Well, Flavius Josephus, in his Antiquities of the Jews, Volume 1, records an incident of Alexander the Great. When his invasion reached the Near East, Jaddua, the high priest went out to meet him and showed him a copy of the book of Daniel, in which Alexander was clearly mentioned. Alexander was so impressed by this that instead of destroying Jerusalem, he entered the city peaceably and worshipped at the temple. Secular scholars want to try to date the writings of the book of Daniel during the reign of Antiochus Epiphanes and the Maccabees, which is about 170 BC. However, the Septuagint, which is the Greek version of the Old Testament, was translated before then, and it contains the book of Daniel. Again, these secular scholars, same thing before with Isaiah. No, there's not too many prophecies that came true. It can't possibly have been written after these. And of course, then they find the Dead Sea Scrolls. And then, okay, it was. Now, for that third one, the Greek language that was able, again, the New Testament's written in Greek. And so again, God allowed this pagan kingdom to pave the way with this common language. And so the New Testament was able to be spread apart. And where was it? On the Roman roads. So the feet, again, that's the Roman Empire, is that one. So you can turn, yeah, so 40 right there. Okay. So that was the Roman Empire. Now we see the deterioration too. We see that the first, second, the third, fourth, if you take a look there, it mentions in verse 39 that they are inferior. You can do that, look at like the quality of metal. You know, gold is Olympics now, right? Gold, silver, bronze. And the value too. The specific gravity of the metals too. There is a deterioration in that. The position too, like the head at the top, the head of the table there. So as we're seeing on this side was a lot more important than the first one. So you have the table, so it's in the position of the metal from head to toes, and the division of sovereignty. So Nebuchadnezzar ruled alone. Then the Medes and the Persians, they had division. They had the Medes and the Persians, the Greco-Macedonian Empire. They started as one, but as you know, after that, then they split into four. Mary Alexander, he had four generals after him and took over. And then Rome wasn't conquered. It fell apart from within. So those two legs of iron eventuates into feet of iron and clay. Again, the Roman roads paved the way for the gospel and the New Testament books to be brought around the known world. Okay, you can go to the next one there. All right. And so, I can read here. Am I doing okay in time? Where's the next there? Am I okay? I don't remember what happened here. I'm going as fast as I can. There you go. All right. I'll read this quickly. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed, and that kingdom will never be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it will itself endure forever. Inasmuch as you saw that stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will take place in the future. So the dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. Then Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and did homage to Daniel and gave orders to present to him an offering and fragrant incense. The king answered Daniel and said, "Surely your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, since you have been able to reveal this mystery." Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and the chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel made a request to the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the administration of the province of Babylon, while Daniel was on the king's court. Now we see in verse 46, Nebuchadnezzar treats Daniel like a god, but Daniel's not going to accept worship. And in verse 47, he tells Daniel, Yahweh is superior to Marduk, my God, my head God, all the other gods I have. Verse 48, it was promised from verse 6, remember in the very beginning, verse 6, so he fulfills his promise. And notice on 49 it ends here, while Daniel's at the king's court, it also says at the king's gate. He sat in the king's gate. Some versions say, if you remember Genesis, Lot sat in the king's gate, and also Mordecai did in the book of Esther. It's a place for judges. So he's really highly esteemed and put up into this high place. And of course, now you think, oh yeah, 2 years from now, when he does graduate, again, going back to what we learned last week, like that's why he's so esteemed. That's why he's in position, because we see here that's why. All right. Well, I am done here. Do you want to promote next week, though? Because I know that all you guys, you love your Veggie Tales, right? And of course, the best one is Rack Shack and Benny. So Rack Shack, and that's next week. Because again, you guys have all these like famous little movie lines. Of course, the best one here, Mr. Lunt. Hey, boss, how many guys did you throw into the furnace? And Mr. Nezer, well, it's 3. And Mr. Lunt, well, it looks like 4 guys in there now, and one of them is real shiny. One more thing, boss, they ain't burning up. So yeah, if you want to hear that exciting story next week,
can we watch the Veggie Tales?
Okay, before we break off into small groups, let's close. Lord, thank you. Thank you so much for this. Thank you again, the model of Daniel, just especially for this group here, the age that he was. Again, no parents to go to. He had 3 friends. That's it. In a foreign land, a pagan land, and yet he was able to stand firm for you. So I pray that these students are able to stand firm for you no matter where they go in this secular area, no matter what public school or university coming up, and all these public places of working, that for their whole life that they can have integrity and just be strong for you. So thank you again for your word. They're able to read it and discuss it now. Amen.
Amen.